So over the past few years, the US Treasury Department has been hit with 3 very serious hacking attacks. Every government agency gets hacking attempts. Very few of those attempts actually turn into actual breaches, and especially very deep breaches, which is what the US Treasury Department has suffered. And a couple of months ago, our colleagues at Bloomberg broke news that the latest breach was much deeper than Treasury had disclosed. And that got us thinking about the question of why does Treasury keep getting hacked, and why does Treasury keep getting hacked so deeply? So this was a great cross-team collaboration between the cyber team and the banking team and projects and investigations team. We set out to answer that question, and what we found was that the U.S. Treasury Department is not run like a single agency when it comes to cybersecurity. It's run like different countries. They all have their own budget from Congress. They all have their own cybersecurity staff. They all have their own cybersecurity executives. Some of them are really good. Some of them are not so great. But what's happened, as we found, is that over the years, as these breaches have kind of accumulated, the U.S. Congress has allocated hundreds of millions of new dollars to the Treasury Department for cybersecurity. One would think that that would improve cybersecurity overall. The problem is when you have, a number of different, essentially, countries kind of operating almost totally independently when it comes to cybersecurity, you're going to get a wide variety of outcomes. And what we've seen here is that there were some very basic security measures that in these 3 instances, the Treasury Department did not employ. And what the Trump administration has told us is they said, we're aware of this problem. We're consolidating a lot of these functions. We're kind of putting a lot of these functions together to improve these problems. And on the surface, that sounds like probably the thing that needs to happen. However, that's not actually what is happening.
So yeah, clearly it sounds like there's some long-term structural issues here. But is there any sense that this has been compounded in any way by headcount issues? I'm thinking particularly, obviously, about the Department of Government Efficiency here, DOGE. Have those cuts kind of come into play in any way?
Absolutely, especially the buyouts. So what we discovered as we were reporting this was, okay, they have all these different kind of entities that operate independently. A lot of the leadership at headquarters, these were senior people who've been around a long time, kind of have been, in many cases, advocating for a consolidation of a lot of these functions. Many of them have taken the Musk buyouts. And, from what we've been told is that a lot of these folks were actually very supportive in spirit of what DOGE is trying to do in terms of consolidating these functions. However, the buyouts were very lucrative, and a lot of these senior officials took the buyouts. And what that's meant is there's kind of a leadership vacuum in cybersecurity at Treasury. I don't know that was necessarily the intended outcome of the DOGE effort, but that certainly was the outcome. So what you have is an organization that really does need to kind of consolidate, pull these functions together, really get strong leadership around what will cybersecurity look like for all the different aspects of this agency. A lot of those folks have now left.
Wall Street banks and others are therefore pretty concerned. What does it mean for sort of sensitive data? I mean, you've talked about the depth of these breaches. What is being exposed, and what are the Wall Street banks worried about?
Yeah, one of our big reasons for pursuing this investigation was after the latest breach came out, we also broke news that a number of the biggest banks, JP Morgan, BNY Mellon, they suspended electronic transmissions. They essentially cut themselves off from the Treasury Department and stopped electronically sending regulatorily required information because they told us, they said the systems weren't safe. There was no way for the banks to guarantee that all of the sensitive data they were required to send to Treasury was actually being protected on the other side. This was an extraordinary thing. I mean, it's not every day you get a regulated entity telling their regulator, we are not sharing information with you. If you want to see it, you can see it. You have to come to our headquarters. Very extraordinary act that they took. So the banks are looking at this as an opportunity. Nobody wants more regulation. They've fought a lot of these regulations over the years, and they are using kind of behind the scenes. The Trump administration has been very accommodating of the banking industry, and they have signaled that they will pursue deregulation. So a number of these banks that are very genuinely concerned about the data security, the security of their data at Treasury, are pushing for a rollback of some of these requirements. And what security experts have told us is they said that may not be the best outcome because you want the government to have good data. You want the government to be able to respond in the case of a systemic attack and reducing the amount of information that regulators have, especially security data, financial data about these big banks. Security experts have told us that may not be the safest outcome.